Let me tell you something, and I want you to hear me clearly. You are not in that struggle by accident. That opposition, that frustration, that feeling like something's got to give, that's not punishment, that's preparation. See, when God is getting ready to take you into something major, I'm talking about a breakthrough so big, it will not only bless you, it'll bless generations that come after you. He doesn't start by showing you the promise. He starts by shaping your character. The first sign that God is preparing you for a breakthrough is pressure. Pressure is preparation, not punishment. This truth often gets overlooked because in the middle of life's crushing moments, it's easy to misinterpret what's happening to us. When the weight feels unbearable, when challenges keep stacking up, when nothing seems to be working out the way we plan, our first instinct is to question, to complain, and sometimes even to doubt God. But what we fail to see is that pressure is one of God's most powerful tools for transformation. It's the process he uses not to destroy us, but to develop us. Imagine this. No one looks at a lump of coal and sees a diamond. But under intense pressure and over time, that coal is transformed into one of the most valuable materials on earth. That transformation doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen without heat. It doesn't happen without stress. The same thing applies to you. You're not being crushed because you're weak. You're being pressed because there's greatness inside you that only pressure can bring out. Pressure comes in many forms. It might show up as financial hardship, strained relationships, or the overwhelming demands of trying to balance your personal dreams with your daily responsibilities. It might be that season when nothing seems to move forward, even though you're doing all the right things. But here's the key. God allows pressure because he's pulling something out of you that you didn't even know was in there. Potential doesn't get revealed in the calm, it gets revealed in the chaos. Comfort never called out a champion, it's pressure that activates power. There's a principle at work here, and it's this: preparation always precedes promotion. God never elevates without equipping, and the equipping doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows. It's during the hard seasons, the hidden seasons, the ones nobody claps for. That's where the real work gets done. That's where your character gets built. That's where your resilience is forged. That's where your faith stops being a concept and becomes a... Pressure reveals what's real. You don't really know what you believe until you've had to stand on that belief with everything shaking around you. You don't really know your own strength until you've had to keep going when quitting seemed like the only option. You don't discover your calling in comfort. You discover it when you're uncomfortable but obedient, uncertain but unshakable, weary but still moving forward. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to pray away the very pressure that's meant to prepare them. We ask God to remove the challenge, but God knows the challenge is what's building the capacity for the blessing we've been asking for. You say you want to lead a movement, but can you handle the pressure of criticism? You say you want financial overflow, but can you manage the pressure of discipline? You say you want purpose, but can you withstand the pressure of walking by faith and not by sight? Don't despise the pressure. It's not a sign that God has abandoned you. It's often the clearest evidence that he's near, because God only presses what he plans to use. He only breaks what he intends to bless. That pressure isn't a punishment. It's a setup. It's a sacred process designed to strip away what's not needed and strengthen what is. It's where weak things become strong and hidden things become visible. It's where dreams are refined and destiny takes shape. When God gets ready to do something major in your life, he doesn't start with the result, he starts with the root. He doesn't build from the top down, he builds from the foundation up. And the foundation always begins with pressure. Closed doors are divine redirection. Most people see a closed door as rejection, as failure, or as the end of an opportunity. But what we often fail to recognize is that in the kingdom of God, a closed door is not the end of something, it's the beginning of something better. When God shuts a door, he's not being cruel and he's not ignoring your prayers. He's being intentional. He's steering you away from what looks good to your eyes, but could be dangerous to your destiny. We live in a world that idolizes access. If a door opens, we assume it must be from God. If it closes, we assume it must be the enemy. But God is not obligated to endorse every opportunity we think we deserve. Sometimes he will close doors, not because you did something wrong, but because he knows what's on the other side is not aligned with the purpose he placed in you. And because he loves you too much to let you settle, he'll shut it down before you ever get a chance to walk through it. It's easy to get discouraged when it seems like everything you're trying to do keeps hitting a wall. You apply for the job and don't get it. You pursue the relationship and it falls apart. You pitch the idea and nobody's interested. You try to make the move and every door you knock on stays closed. But what if that closed door was divine protection? What if it was God saying, not this way, because he has a path that doesn't just lead to success, but leads to legacy? You see, when God closes a door, he doesn't owe us an explanation. He operates from a level of wisdom we can't even begin to comprehend. He sees the whole picture while we're still looking at one piece of the puzzle. You might think you missed your moment, but from God's perspective, he's just removing the obstacles that would have derailed you. A closed door in the natural often means an open path in the spiritual. Sometimes the door has to close so your dependence on God opens up. If every door stayed open, we would rely on our own strength, our own intellect, our own connections. But when things don't work out the way we planned, that's when our prayers get real. That's when our faith gets stretched. That's when we stop treating God like a consultant and start trusting him as our source. There are doors that will stay shut because they don't fit the version of you God is developing. You've outgrown certain environments, certain mindsets, certain circles. If God let you in, you would shrink to fit in. So he shuts the door not to restrict you, but to expand you. Closed doors create the space for growth. They force you to ask better questions. They push you to think higher, move different, and listen more carefully to his voice. A closed door can be a catalyst for creativity. It can trigger innovation. When plan A gets blocked, you start seeing possibilities you never considered. Some of the greatest breakthroughs don't come when everything is working. They come when nothing is working, and you're forced to think beyond your comfort zone. God's redirection is often the birthplace of your next level. And here's the truth. If it was your door, it would have opened. If it was your season, it would have unfolded. God is too strategic to let something pass you by that was truly meant for you. So when you find yourself standing in front of a closed door, don't panic and don't push. Don't try to force your way in. Instead, pause and recognize that this might be the very evidence that God is guiding your steps, not just granting your wishes. Faith requires irrational, not convenient obedience, not logical obedience, not delayed obedience, irrational obedience. The kind that doesn't make sense to your mind but makes perfect sense in the spirit. The kind where God tells you to move before you see the way. The kind where he tells you to sow before you reap. The kind where he asks for trust before he gives details. That's the kind of obedience that unlocks supernatural breakthroughs. God doesn't operate on human logic. If he did, he wouldn't be God. What he asks you to do will often defy your understanding because his thoughts are higher than your thoughts and his ways are higher than your ways. We like to obey when it's comfortable, when it fits the budget, when it lines up with our schedule, when it confirms what we already believe. But faith doesn't grow in comfort, it grows in contradiction. It grows in the tension between what he said and what you see. And the bridge between the promise and the manifestation is obedience that doesn't make sense. Think about every major move of God in Scripture. He told Noah to build a boat when there was no rain. He told Abraham to leave everything familiar without telling him where he was going. He told Joshua to march around Jericho instead of attacking it. He told Peter to cast his net on the other side after catching nothing all night. None of these instructions were logical. None of them made sense to the people receiving them, but every one of them produced power because the obedience was rooted in faith, not reason. We want to see before we believe, but God says believe and then you'll see. That's irrational obedience. That's when you give before you get. That's when you praise before the breakthrough. That's when you apply again after being rejected. That's when you stay planted when everything in you wants to run. God uses irrational instructions to reveal who really trusts him. Obedience is the proof of faith. Not feelings, not words, obedience. Sometimes the instruction will stretch you so far outside your comfort zone that you question whether you even heard God right. That's because he's not trying to accommodate your convenience. He's developing your capacity. Obedience expands your spiritual muscle. It trains your spirit to listen above the noise, to trust beyond the logic, to walk when there's no path. The more you obey without understanding, the more your understanding begins to align with his wisdom. Obedience doesn't always lead to immediate reward. Sometimes it leads to testing. God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, the very son he waited years to receive. That wasn't a test of cruelty. It was a test of priority. It was a test of trust. Would Abraham obey even when the command clashed with the promise? That's irrational obedience. And because he obeyed, God provided the ram and the promise was preserved. God will test your obedience before he releases the overflow, because he needs to know the blessing won't replace the blesser in your heart. Irrational obedience will make you look foolish to people who walk by sight. They'll question your decisions. They'll say you're being unrealistic. But what they call unrealistic, God calls faith. And faith will always challenge your pride, your plans, and your preferences. It will ask for things that don't add up. It will stretch you to let go of certainty and cling to the word of the Lord. And when you obey in the face of uncertainty, you make room for God to move in a way that's bigger than your logic and greater than your plan. Isolation precedes elevation. When God is about to do something significant in your life, one of the first things he often does is pull you away from the crowd. Not because he's punishing you, but because he's preparing you. There are seasons where God has to separate you so he can speak to you. He can't elevate what's still entangled. He can't promote what's still distracted. He can't reveal destiny to a heart that's too busy managing popularity. Isolation is where clarity is born. It's in the quiet spaces, the lonely seasons, the uncomfortable in-betweens, that God begins to strip away what's unnecessary and refine what's essential. It's where your ears get tuned to his voice. It's where your spirit gets recalibrated to his will. When you're surrounded by opinions, it's easy to lose the sound of instruction. But when you're alone with God, the volume of purpose gets louder. He speaks in the stillness, but we miss it when we're constantly surrounded by noise. Sometimes isolation feels like abandonment, but it's actually alignment. God is aligning your mind, your heart, and your habits with the next version of you, the version that's required for the assignment ahead. Elevation always demands transformation, and transformation often happens in solitude. Before God takes you to the platform, he'll take you through the process. Before he hands you the microphone, he'll train you in the wilderness. The wilderness isn't a punishment. It's a classroom. It's where your faith is matured, your character is tested, and your identity is affirmed. Jesus himself experienced isolation before elevation. Before he launched his public ministry, the Spirit led him into the wilderness. Not the devil, the Spirit. Because even Jesus had to endure solitude before stepping into significance. He fasted, he prayed, and he faced temptation. It was a season of intense testing and complete separation from the noise of the world. And it was necessary because the weight of his assignment required the strength of a consecrated life. The same is true for you. You say you want to be used by God in a mighty way, but can you handle being set apart? You say you want influence, but can you carry it without needing attention? Isolation exposes the parts of you that still crave validation. It reveals whether your faith is built on applause or on obedience. Elevation isn't just about being seen, it's about being ready. And readiness is forged in hidden places. God will pull you out of certain relationships, out of certain environments, even out of certain opportunities, not to reduce you, but to refine you. You may not understand it while it's happening, but later you'll realize he was protecting you from compromise. Some connections can't go where God is taking you. Some voices would have distracted you from your assignment. Some atmospheres would have polluted your anointing. So God isolates you to preserve what he's planted in you. There are revelations that only come in isolation. There are downloads that only fall in quiet places. There are visions that only unlock when the room is empty. You've been asking God to speak, but you're still surrounded by noise. Isolation is the invitation to intimacy. It's the space where surface living dies and deep roots are formed. It's where he prepares you in private for what he's about to do in public. You don't build endurance in the spotlight. You build it when no one is watching. You don't learn obedience on the stage. You learn it in the shadows. God uses isolation to stretch your trust, deepen your focus, and elevate your perspective. What looks like being set aside is actually being set apart. What feels like loneliness is actually preparation for legacy. Spiritual shifts signal divine alignment. There are moments in your life when something within you begins to change. It's as though your entire being is realigning to something greater than you could ever imagine. You can feel it in your spirit. It's as if the atmosphere around you has shifted, and suddenly things that once felt ordinary now seem extraordinary. You may not see the full picture, but you sense that something significant is unfolding. These shifts, although subtle, are God's way of preparing you for a move that's about to take place in your life. When God begins to spiritually shift your life, he often starts by rearranging your inner world. He changes your desires, your priorities, your mindset, and your motivations. You might notice that the things you used to enjoy no longer satisfy you. The things you thought were important now seem trivial. What once brought you comfort now feels like stagnation. This internal shift is God's way of refining your character and aligning your heart with his purpose. It's as if he's saying, I'm pulling you out of your comfort zone because I've got something bigger for you. I need you to step into this next season fully equipped, and that means recalibrating the very core of who you are. These shifts often come when you least expect them, and they may feel uncomfortable at first. You may not fully understand why you're being led in a new direction, why relationships are changing, or why doors that used to be open are now closing. But in these moments, it's important to trust that God knows exactly what he's doing. He is not randomly shifting your circumstances. He's aligning everything to fit his divine plan. He's setting you up for the future he's already prepared for you. When God aligns you, he doesn't just move you physically, he moves you spiritually. It's like recalibrating a compass to ensure you're pointed in the right direction. Without this realignment, you might find yourself chasing things that lead to dead ends, pursuing dreams that aren't meant for you, or wasting time in seasons that were never intended for your growth. But once he shifts you, you'll find that doors start to open, opportunities begin to manifest, and the way ahead becomes clear. The path won't always be easy, but it will always be right. A spiritual shift can feel like a transition, a period of waiting, stretching, and growth. But it's during this time that God prepares you for greater things. You may feel as though you're being tested, stretched beyond what you think you can handle. You might wonder why things aren't happening the way you imagined they would. But remember, these shifts are not meant to break you. They are meant to mold you into the person capable of handling what's coming next. The capacity God is building in you now will enable you to carry the weight of the blessing he's about to give you. It's during these shifts that you experience growth that can't be measured by human standards, but only by divine standards. Spiritual shifts also bring clarity. When God realigns you, he removes confusion and replaces it with a clear sense of direction. You may begin to see your life's purpose in a new light. What once felt like a series of random events starts to make sense as you look back and see how everything was part of a larger plan. The more you surrender to God's realignment, the more you start to understand his voice. He no longer feels distant, but close. The more you yield to his shifts, the more you see his hand guiding every step you take. However, these shifts are not always immediate or painless. It can feel like being in a state of transition, moving from one season to another without fully understanding what lies ahead. But this is where faith comes in. Trusting that the shift is for your good, even when you can't see the full outcome, is key. Just because you don't have all the answers doesn't mean God isn't moving behind the scenes. The shift is often invisible to the naked eye, but in the spirit, the groundwork is being laid for something extraordinary. As you embrace these shifts, know that they are often the most important moments in your life. They are the divine realignments that position you to step into your destiny, to walk into new seasons, and to embrace the purpose you were always meant to fulfill.